Hey everyone, it's Moby's Primal, and I am back with another Warhammer Fantasy Battle Report. This game marks my first encounter against the new Vampire Counts book, and it couldn't be against a greater opponent. This game is pretty basic compared to the last one with the fancy surprise encounter scenario, so let's just get right into it. 2,400 points, battle line, let's get it on. Going down the Heartless army, starting from my left flank, I have my Virgin Unpainted Trebuchet. Initially I had reservations against using 2 Trebuchets in my army, but after facing that Demon army that I did last week when I was using my friend's Orcs, I realized that every single model in that army would hit every single Bretonnian I have in this army on a 3+, and then they wound everything on a 2+, except for my 2 fighting characters. And there's several armies that can make very similar claims to that. So, I have got to have something to even the odds, and with the rate that I scatter and misfire with my 1 Trebuchet, I don't think it's too terribly OP to bring a second, especially looking at the composition of the rest of my army with all those peasants. Anyway, tangent over. So, I have the Trebuchet, and then I have my Knights. Deleted joins them. His kit has changed just a little bit. He still has Heroic Killing Blow and 6 attacks, but now he has the Mantle of Damsel Elena to make him immune to poison and a killing blow. I figure it might come in handy if he happens to fight across a Gorgon or an Arachnarok or, a Hydra that got buffed by the Cauldron or something like that. Up in front, I have Fast Cavalry and my Pegasus Knights, and then I have my 3 units of infantry form the core of my force, with the Honor Guard taken up in the center. My 3 other characters are sprinkled in there. Sam is attached to the infantry unit there on the left to grant the blessing. And then on the far right I have my archer units and the other fast cavalry and the 2nd trebuchet. My opponent brings to battle starting from his left, my right. There's a unit of 35 skeleton warriors who are joined by a level 2 necro and his Strigoi vampire general. Holy crap, that guy is not kidding around nasty. He's got fly, +3 attacks for a total of 8 that benefit from his infinite hatred, and poison, and every time he does a wound, he grants a 2nd attack. So between his next big block is a spirit host, a single spirit host stand. Then he has a unit of 40 grave guard with great weapons, batteried by a unit of 40 ghouls who house just a hero level vampire and another necromancer. Next is a very, very scary unit of 8 crypt horrors. Then moving on to his far right, he has 2 very, very annoying single stands of spirit hosts. So I pray, so the vampires take first turn, and they just shamble forward, some at a march and some not, because you have to be within range of your general to do it. One of the necromancers brings in a fresh new zombie unit, but nothing else really happens. So Heartless 1, I push my infantry and knight units forward, and I swing my Pegasus and fast cavalry into the enemy's deployment zone. I'm really hoping that those spears hosts move forward and I can get some rear charges on them and break them through combat res with, combo charging and a front charge. Neither of my mages got any magic missiles, and my only magic weapon in the entire army is on the general, so aside from that, the only way for me to deal with those things is static combat res. Over on the right, I move the fast cavalry so that they can maybe disrupt the enemy later on, but for now they're just going to shoot zombies or something. We go into Vampire turn 2. Here's a shot of the table. His units on the right move up with the graveyard entering the building. That here spirit host is in the swamp and will be able to charge a trebuchet next turn. There's nothing I can do about it at this point, so well. During the magic phase, the zombie unit gets plussed up and a new skeleton unit is born right there. They look like zombies, but they're actually skeletons. And then the other spirit host starts playing chicken with my fast cavalry and my Pegasus Knights. Also, his crypt horrors turn to face my Pegasus too. I look at this and I kind of shrug my shoulders and scratch my head. These guys just can't turn and catch my Pegasi. My Pegasus are too fast. They'll just get out of the way. Meanwhile, I know that the Pegasus Knights can't really do anything about the crypt horrors. On the charge, I'm going to get 6 strength 5 attacks and 12 strength 4 attacks. So statistically, I'll hit with half of both of those. So 3 strength 5 attacks and 6 strength 4 attacks, and then probably only do 4 wounds because those things are toughness 5, and they'll block 1, maybe 2 with the regen. I don't have anything in my army save for some maybe really, really lucky heroic killing blow rounds of combat that my general can have to deal with that crypt horror unit. People make Pegasus Knights out to be this really dangerous thing, but they are nowhere near as dangerous as any of the new stuff in any of the 8th edition books. So that's it for Vampires 2. No combat's going on. Moving into Heartless, my fast cavalry get away from the trebuchets. I expect it to break, and I don't need them fleeing. In the center, I decide to press my line forward, so everything moves up while the Pegasus and Fast Cavalry get out of the way of the Spirit Host and the Crypt Horrors. So here's a top-down shot. Then with shooting, I whittle down that skeleton unit near to nothing. Unfortunately, they're not worth any points because they're a summon unit. That's kind of frustrating, but it keeps the bookkeeping down that was kind of a hassle in previous editions in the Vampire book. Vampire turn 3, we have our first charge in the game. The Spirit Host connects with the Trebuchet. Then the other Spirit Host puts my Knights in check, which, you know, I'm okay with. Delita can handle those things. Place rank standard and everything will probably counteract the charge and flank if that thing ever charges. The zombies and skeletons move up, as do the Graveguard and skeletons here, the regular skeletons. And then the Crypt Horrors reform again to face my battle line. Combat happens, and the Spirit Host only does a single wound to the Trebuchet crew. So it wins by 2, but I throw a 3 and the Trebuchet holds. So that's a little mini victory for me because it's now holding up that ethereal unit. Going into Heartless 5, looks like the tabletop looks like this. Basically, you know, I think at this point I have 0 chance of winning the game. Pretty much half the game is over. I can't really do any charges this turn, so half the game is over. I know I can't whittle any of his units down to nothing in order to score any victory points with the time I've got left, and killing a Spirit Host here or there is not going to make up for the points to do anything. So, you know, but I'll continue playing. My Fast Cavalry move up and block the Graveguard, and then Ajora, that's my BSB, she hides in or garrisons the building, mostly for the cosmetic effect, because I think it looks neat that she's kind of like looking down on the peasant hordes below her. Speaking of peasants, they move up to receive the charge from the Crypt Horrors, and then the other unit faces down the Spirit Host on the other side, knowing that it's just going to get out of the way. My Knights and Pegasus, you know, I can't really do anything. That giant runes there in the center, we said that was dangerous terrain, and I know that neither of these units can do anything against the undead unless they get a really devastating combo charge into a flank or something like that. So that's it for my movement. Check out the board. You know, if it were any other army besides undead, and if it weren't for that huge piece of dangerous terrain, I would say I am in a great field position. I have a nice surround, my steadfast units aren't in terrible position to get one-shotted or anything like that, and my knights are in a decent spot to, you know, to charge when they need to. But because it's undead and the way that they don't break and they just crumble, you know, I'm not feeling too good about this. My shooting happens, and then I just blaze away on that risen zombie unit, and then in combat, my Trebuchet holds again. I only the Spirit Host only kills one guy, and I roll a 4 to hold. So that's amazing for me. Vampire 4. All right, so this was kind of awkward. I wish I'd taken some pictures in between the charge moves, one at a time. So here's what happens: the Crypt Horrors charge my men-at-arms there. The Graveguard charged the Fast Cavalry, like I expect them, and then also the skeletons over there charge the Fast Cavalry. I elect to hold all the charges, and then when the Crypt Horrors, he moves those first, when they hit the infantry, it basically blocks out the Graveguard that they can't close the door on the Fast Cavalry in the flank as it was intended. So instead, the Fast Cavalry have got to close the door to the Graveguard, so they swing all the way around, which doesn't have the intended effect at all, and then the Skeletons connect their charge, and since it was originally a front charge, we played it that they would just swoop around and get into the new front facing of the Fast Cavalry. So, for the record, I hate that enemy close the door if there's not enough room to close the door with the charging unit rule. I don't think that's very fair. Anyways, both the Risen units charge one of my Archer units, and you know, I'm feeling okay about that. There's not many of them, and I have that fence there. The ghouls are back here working around. I think they reformed, and then the Spirit Host block gets in the way of my knights, while the other one moves in behind my Fast Cavalry. The Spirit Host finally finishes off that Trebuchet, and then my Archers beat the crap out of those Risen units. You know, thanks to that fence, even though I failed the fear check, the zombies are hitting on 5s, and the skeletons are only hitting on 4s, but there's not very many of them, and then I do a bunch of wounds, have a rank standard, and they don't have to do any wounds to me, and I kill them all through combat res, you know, but fortunately, again, it's not worth any points. Then, of course, the Fast Cavalry are decimated, the enemy infantry reform, and I lose surprisingly few men-at-arms against these Crypt Ghouls. I do have the blessing on that unit, so... Moving into Heartless 4, the Knights charge that blocking Spirit Host, and then here's my dilemma here. I have this flank set up against the Crypt Horrors, and I thought it would have been better to just cede that one infantry unit, since I don't think I have any chance of beating those Toughness 5 regenning horrors. But, you know, I've had this situation before where I look at it, I think I've had it once in a Chaos game, and I've had it once in an Ogre game, where I have the flank, and I always look back and regret not charging. So I decided to send the honor guard into the flank. We'll see if I regret charging in this game. Shooting phase, my trebuchet finally scores a hit after like 4 games of missing. That's actually worth something. It lands smack dab in the skeleton unit, which on a 20mm based infantry unit is going to hit 21 models, and it kills 20 of them. Now, normally I would feel guilty about this, but since the crypt horrors are basically unkillable to me, I don't. This is an equalizer that I need, but it's something that I needed like 3 turns ago, and against an enemy that doesn't come back to life. Hand in hand, the knights easily take care of that spirit host, but in the center, with all that static combat res, charge, flank, standard 3 ranks, I think I did like 1 wound, and then the horrors, they romp my men-at-arms, and I actually lose combat by 4. I'm steadfast, but I'm stick, but man, that is disheartening to put an enemy in a bind with a heavy ranked flank charge, and then and not only lose by 4 is huge. So now I think I'm probably lost both units instead of just the 1. So, yep. I regret charging now. Top shot, going into Team Vampires 5, the Ghoulkin Vampire, whatever, Strigoi, he charges in against the Honor Guard. So my opponent was figuring that if he charged the whole Grave Guard unit in, he would only have corner to corner. He'd have lots of ranks and everything, but he'd only get 1 guy to fight anyway. So, and my unit's stubborn, so may as well just make it the general, since he's a mass killer, and then he doesn't commit the Grave Guard to getting locked into combat. That skeleton unit charges in the flank of my dwindling men-at-arms unit, and then the rest of his infantry basically just park around and behind everything. And hand-in-hand, my men-at-arms are killed to a man, and I lose by a lot, but my honor guard hold thanks to being stubborn and range of the tower where my BSB is garrisoning. So Heartless 5, I'm running out of options here. I kind of poorly positioned Sam in front of my other reserve men-at-arms unit there on the left, so she had to charge skeletons just to make way for him, and then I figured, in for a penny, in for a pound, I might actually get a transformation spell off, so I send in Elliot too, so I have 2 mages, men-at-arms unit versus that smaller vampire or skeleton unit. Delete the knights to stare down the Strigoi Vampire, and what I'm hoping here is that my honor guard can hold for 1 last turn, and then I can charge my general into the Strigoi on turn 6 and maybe, just maybe, get a lucky heroic killing blow on him and score a ton of points. Other remaining moves, I do a couple of moves with my knights and Pegasus just to keep them safe from the rest of the vampire army since they're not in any position to do anything. And then in the magic phase, I managed to buff the men-at-arms and morph into a Hydra. So here's another shot. I think this is the first time I've ever gotten that spell to work when I really, really needed it. In hand-to-hand combat, I completely dust that skeleton unit between all the buff peasants. I'm wounded on 2s at that point, and my monster breathing and thunderstomp and stuff like that. Unfortunately, my honor guard are taken down to just the actual relic carriers, the guy that's hauling the urn, and then they fail their stubborn check, so they're instantly killed because that counts as a standard bearer. So this frees up the vampire and the ghouls, so I won't be getting that climactic showdown that might have evened the game up in the final turn. Then Vampire's turn 6, the Vampire charges my Pegasus Knights, and I decide to flee, but I only go like 4 or 5 inches, and then the Vampire throws a 12, so he goes 22, connects a charge against a fleeing enemy, and kills all of my Pegasus Knights. Also, the Ghouls charge into my General. They can't kill him, they've got poison, but he's immune to it, but he does break from combat, and then he gets run down and killed. So there's nothing I can do in my final turn, so that's pretty much the game. It was actually pretty close up into that 6th Vampire turn when I lost both my General and the Pegasus Knights. I like to think that if my plan had worked and the Honor Guard did hold, maybe I could have killed the Strigoi, even things up, or at the very, very least, had bragging rights that my General took down a very, very deadly Vampire. In hindsight, I absolutely do regret ever sending the Honor Guard in against those Crypt Horrors in the first place, as I probably would have just lost the 1 unit instead of both. They would have finished that Men-at-Arms unit off and then had to charge a fresh Honor Guard unit and probably not would be able to kill them in time. Those Horrors are obviously designed as a tank-type unit. They have Toughness 5 and they have a 5+ regen. So, I can't put any sort of meaningful hurt on them without something like, lucky, like I said before, lucky heroic killing blow or a big unit of flaming banner Grail Knights. But because my infantry are sporting such a low weapon skill, those Horrors, they suddenly become a damage unit also. I don't understand why GW can't do an errata to fix obvious fallacies like peasant weapon skill and, things like I don't know, like Dark Elf Hydra cost? You know, how old is the Bretonian book? I think it came out in like '02 or '03 or something like that. Would it really just kill them to outright come out and say, hey, by the way, Men-at-Arms and Grail Relic units are now weapon skill 3? I don't know. I did learn something from this game. Basically, avoid any ogre-style unit at all cost. And I am a bit worried that I'll see lots of vampire armies at the tournament in July, and a lot of them will probably be using this silly 1, 2, 3 Spirit Host stands in the tournament. So I'll have to come up with ways to deal with them too. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed it.